They thought Charleston Harbor would be just another tragedy, until a loyal German shepherd ran straight into the fire. What happened next left every rescuer in tears. This story will forever change how you see courage, loyalty, and faith. If you think you've seen every kind of hero, prepare yourself for a moment that will shake your heart and restore your faith in miracles. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Because tonight, one dog's bravery will remind the world that God still works through the loyal hearts that never walk away. The wind off Charleston Harbor carried the taste of salt and smoke that night. It was the kind of cold that made the steel piers groan, the kind of silence that only came before trouble. Officer Daniel Brooks, 35, moved along the docks with the slow confidence of someone who had seen too much to ever hurry again. He was tall, broad-shouldered, the stubble on his jaw catching the glint of his patrol light. His dark hair was damp from sea mist, and his eyes, storm blue and restless, betrayed the sleeplessness of a man haunted by loss. 2 years ago, he'd watched the flames swallow the apartment where his wife had been trapped. Since then, every call that smelled of smoke clawed open the same wound. At his side trotted Ranger, a 5-year-old German shepherd with a black and tan coat that gleamed like wet bronze under the pier lights. His gait was steady, head low, nose twitching at invisible currents. Ranger's left ear bore a thin scar, the mark of a training explosion that had nearly deafened him. Yet the dog was fearless, a mirror of Daniel's own stubborn heart. The radio crackled. "Unit 4, report status." Daniel pressed the mic. "Harbor District clear. Wait, smoke sighted near Dock 9. Investigating." He clipped the radio back and quickened his pace, Ranger following, paws silent against the wet planks. The closer they came, the thicker the haze grew. Black ribbons curling from between stacked shipping containers. The air burned with the sharp tang of fuel. Daniel drew his flashlight, slicing a beam through the fog. "Easy, boy," he murmured. Ranger barked once, then froze, body rigid. Through the smoke, the faint orange glow of fire danced behind a row of crates. Daniel rounded the corner and stopped. A container door hung open, flames licking its edges, illuminating rows of wooden crates stamped with foreign markings. When one exploded, a spray of metal shards tore into the night. Daniel ducked behind a forklift. "Damn it!" He reached for his radio again. "Dispatch, this is Officer Brooks. Container fire, possible hazardous cargo, requesting backup and suppression team. Static hissed. Then the voice of Captain Royce Barrett came through, low and clipped. Stand down, Brooks. Dock 9 is restricted under federal orders. Close the file and clear the area. Daniel frowned. Sir, there's ordnance inside those crates. Military grade. Barrett's tone hardened. That's an order, son. You're not cleared for this one. The channel went dead. Daniel stared at the radio, jaw tight. Barrett had been his superior for nearly a decade. A heavy-set man in his 50s, with silver hair, and the weariness of command etched across his face. Normally cautious, but lately evasive. Daniel felt the old knot of distrust twist inside him. He turned back to the container. Restricted or not, something's burning. Ranger growled softly, as if agreeing. Then came a cough, weak and human. Daniel's head snapped toward the sound, a flicker of movement behind a stack of barrels. He sprinted over and found a woman collapsed on the concrete, soot streaking her pale face. She was in her early 30s, slim, with olive skin and chestnut hair plastered to her forehead. Her eyes, dark, intelligent, terrified, fluttered open when he knelt beside her. Hey, stay with me. I'm with the police. She gasped, voice hoarse. They set it off, wanted to destroy the evidence. Her words dissolved into a fit of coughing. Daniel lifted her gently, carrying her toward clean air, while Ranger barked in warning at another small blast. Once clear of the smoke, he laid her down beside the patrol SUV and handed her an oxygen mask from the kit. "What's your name?" he asked. "Mia Torres," she managed. "I'm a structural engineer working the harbor reconstruction project." Her gaze locked onto his. "But that's not what they're really building." Daniel studied her face. Sharp features, determined even through the panic. There was something in her eyes he recognized. The look of someone who'd seen truth and wished she hadn't. "What are you talking about?" She pointed weakly toward the blaze. "Those crates. They're not cargo. They're covering for something buried under the docks. Tunnels, filled with explosive materials. They call it an eco-tourism renovation, but it's a front." Before Daniel could respond, the fire suppression team arrived. Sirens wailing, red lights painting the fog. But when he looked closer at the arriving crew, his pulse jumped. The men weren't local firefighters. Their uniforms were blank, unmarked, and their eyes avoided his. One of them, a tall man with a scar running from temple to jaw, gave him a brief, warning glance as they passed. Ranger's fur bristled instantly. "Officer Brooks," one of the men called in a neutral tone. "Captain Barrett, said we'll take it from here. Daniel's gut screamed no. He stepped protectively in front of Mia. She needs medical attention. I'll escort her myself. The man hesitated, then shrugged. Suit yourself. As the false firefighters moved to contain the flames, Daniel opened the passenger door, helping Mia inside. Ranger leapt in after her, head on her lap. She smiled faintly, trembling fingers brushing the dog's ear. He's beautiful, she whispered. You trust him. Daniel started the engine, eyes still on the mirror. With my life. He pulled away from the dock as the first explosion bloomed behind them. Brighter, deeper, deliberate. Mia flinched, clutching Ranger. Daniel's voice was low, steady. You're going to tell me everything you know about that project. She nodded through tears. If we don't stop them soon, they'll turn the entire harbor into a powder keg. The flames behind them painted the harbor in molten orange. For Daniel Brooks, that fire wasn't just another case. It was the ghost of his past returning. And this time, he swore, it wouldn't end the same way. The morning after the fire came gray and heavy, the harbor blanketed in fog that refused to lift. The smell of burned salt and diesel still hung in the air. Daniel Brooks parked his unmarked car near the edge of the old industrial district, far from the official barricades. The city wanted to pretend last night hadn't happened. Beside him, Ranger sat alert on the passenger seat, his left shoulder bandaged from a shallow cut. The German shepherd's golden brown eyes followed Daniel's every movement with quiet devotion. You should have stayed home, Daniel muttered, though both knew that wasn't an option. Mia Torres waited near the entrance to a derelict warehouse marked Pierce Logistics. The name alone made Daniel's chest tighten. The same company logo he'd once seen on the burning apartment truck that had killed his wife. Mia looked different in daylight. Her hair, now tied in a tight braid, caught the pale sun like copper threads. She wore a navy work jacket over a gray hoodie, jeans streaked with dust, and eyes that refused to blink long enough to let fear in. You sure about this? Daniel asked. I have to be, she said, checking the camera strapped to her chest. If I can prove they're storing RDX under the docks, it could take down half the council that signed those permits. Daniel gave a grim nod. Then, let's find your proof. They slipped through a broken side door, Ranger leading. The place smelled of oil, mold, and something metallic, sharp enough to sting. His flashlight beam landed on stacks of crates, all labeled as marine equipment. But the markings were too fresh, the stencils military standard. Ranger's nose twitched, then stiffened. A deep growl rumbled in his throat. "What is it, boy?" Daniel crouched beside him. Ranger pressed forward, tail rigid, sniffing the cracks between crates. His ears flattened as he pawed at a dark smear on the concrete, chemical residue. "RDX," Mia whispered. "High-yield explosive. They're staging it here before shipment." Daniel's jaw tightened. The old pain flared in his chest. The memory of flames, the scream he'd never reach in time. His hand trembled before he clenched it into a fist. "Same material used in that apartment fire 2 years ago," he murmured. "Same damn company." A faint noise echoed from the upper catwalk, metal boots scraping steel. Ranger's ears shot up. Daniel motioned for silence. 2 men appeared above them, dressed in black work jackets, rifles slung carelessly. One had a thick beard streaked with gray and a crooked nose. Tanner Briggs, a former dock foreman known for settling debts with his fists. The other, younger, with a buzz cut and a jagged tattoo curling up his neck. Leo Cross, ex-private security. Eyes hollow, like someone who'd stopped believing in anything long ago. Briggs's voice carried through the rafters. "You think the boss don't know you're sniffing around here, Brooks? Barrett told us you'd never learn." Daniel's blood ran cold at the name. Captain Barrett, his own superior. "You're working for Barrett?" "Not exactly," Briggs sneered. "We just clean up his mess." The first bullet hit a beam above Daniel's head. He dove for cover, dragging Mia behind a forklift. Ranger lunged forward with a snarl, sprinting through the haze. "Ranger, no!" Daniel shouted, but the dog was already a streak of motion. Leo swung his knife down as Ranger leapt. Steel met flesh. The shepherd's yelp tore through the air, followed by Leo's scream as jaws clamped down on his arm. Daniel fired, hitting the railing. Briggs cursed and disappeared into the shadows. Leo fell, bleeding, clutching his arm as Ranger staggered back, his shoulder slashed open. "Stay with me, boy," Daniel said, dropping beside him. His hands shook as he ripped open his kit, pressing gauze against the wound. Ranger whined softly, tail thumping once, refusing to look away from his partner's eyes. Mia knelt beside them, breath unsteady. "He saved you," she whispered. Daniel nodded, throat tight. "He always does." Outside, sirens began to wail. Too soon, too close. Daniel looked toward the door, then back at the injured shepherd. "They're coming to wipe the place clean," he said. "We can't stay." Mia helped him lift Ranger into the car, his fur matted with blood, but his gaze still fierce. As they sped away from the docks, Daniel's reflection flickered in the rearview mirror. Haunted, but not broken. Behind them, The warehouse exploded in a bloom of orange fire, the shock wave rippling across the water like a curse returning home. Rain swept across Charleston like sheets of gray glass. By noon, the courthouse steps gleamed slick and cold, the kind of day where justice felt far away. Daniel Brooks walked up the marble stairs, a worn file clutched under his arm. The evidence he carried, digital logs, payment records, and encrypted security footage, could expose a network of corruption that ran deeper than any storm. His uniform was soaked through, the badge on his chest dull beneath the drizzle. Ranger was not by his side, and the empty space beside him felt louder than thunder. Inside, the city hall smelled of old wood and politics. Behind a wall of polished brass and portraits of mayors long forgotten sat Captain Royce Barrett. His office, usually bright, was dim now, blinds drawn, rain streaking down the window like tears. The man himself looked older than usual, heavy-set, gray at the temples, the kind of face that used to command respect, but now carried guilt like a scar. "Captain," Daniel said quietly, laying the file on his desk. "You need to see this before it's buried. Pierce Logistics has been paying city officials for permits that don't exist. You signed half of them." Barrett's eyes flicked to the folder, then back to Daniel. His jaw tightened. "Where did you get this?" "From the central server. Mia Torres cracked the access key. She risked her life for it." Barrett rose slowly from his chair. Up close, he looked worn, deep lines across his face, eyes bloodshot from nights without rest. Once, Daniel had trusted this man more than anyone. Barrett had mentored him, guided him after the death of his wife. But now, his voice was hoarse, full of something darker. "You shouldn't have done that, son," Barrett said. "There are things you don't understand. The people behind this, they're not the kind you can fight and win." Daniel took a step closer. "If we don't fight, we've already lost." For a long moment, Barrett said nothing. Then, almost gently, he pressed a button on his desk. The door opened. 2 uniformed officers entered. Men Daniel didn't recognize, their faces blank and their eyes hard. "Officer Brooks," Barrett said formally, "you are under arrest for unauthorized access to restricted files and breach of federal security protocols." Daniel's chest tightened. "You're serious?" Barrett looked away. "Hand over your badge." He wanted to argue, but the weight of betrayal froze him. He unpinned the badge, the same one he'd worn through every storm, every night patrol, and laid it on the desk. The sound it made was small, final. Outside, the rain fell harder as they led him away. Hours later, a guard shoved Daniel into a holding room inside the precinct basement. The air smelled of mildew and old concrete. Across town, Ranger sat in a steel kennel at the Charleston K-9 Detention and Training Center, a sterile building surrounded by chain-link fences. He paced restlessly, ears twitching at every sound, nose pressed against the bars. The wound on his shoulder had begun to heal, but the emptiness beside him gnawed deeper than pain. An older handler named Officer Glenn Porter, in his late 50s, with graying beard and weary eyes, approached. He'd worked with K-9s his entire career, the kind of man who spoke to dogs more than people. "Easy, boy," he murmured, sliding a bowl of water in. "Your partner's in a tight spot, but good dogs like you, they always find their way back." Ranger whimpered low, eyes fixed on the door. Rain echoed on the roof above like the beating of a distant heart. That night, Mia Torres sat in a dim motel room on the edge of town. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through her laptop, encrypted messages, server pings, fragments of files she'd stolen before the network shut her out. Her reflection in the screen showed exhaustion. Dark circles under sharp eyes, hair damp and uncombed. She'd been running since morning, chased by faces she didn't recognize. Then a window popped open. "File transfer complete," she typed quickly. "Daniel, they're moving the cargo tomorrow night. Coordinates attached. Don't let them erase you." Her message sent just as headlights flashed outside. She slammed the laptop shut and slipped out the back door. Back in his office, Captain Barrett sat alone. The storm outside had thinned to drizzle, but he didn't move. On the corner of his desk was a framed photo. A boy of 16, grinning in a baseball uniform. His son. The boy who died 3 years ago in a warehouse explosion. An explosion later linked to defective containers from Pierce Logistics. Barrett pressed his fingers to the glass. His voice cracked. "Forgive me, Jake." For the first time in years, he wept. Quietly, helplessly. The sound of a man caught between loyalty and the grave weight of conscience. The wind off Charleston Bay screamed through the night like a wounded thing. Rain came in sheets, washing the city in silver as the storm rolled across the harbor. From the far side of the bridge, Daniel Brooks crouched in the shadows, mud streaked across his uniform, his breath sharp with adrenaline. The bruise on his jaw throbbed where a guard had struck him earlier. But he was free now. He had broken out of the holding room by sheer instinct and rage. A vent cover, a loose screw, a timed distraction. It had all come together like something guided by fate. But he wasn't thinking about fate. He was thinking about Ranger. Every step he took was toward the K-9 detention center. The compound was dark. Only one floodlight left burning through the storm. Daniel vaulted the perimeter fence, landing hard on wet ground. Inside, the kennels echoed with barking. But he heard one bark that cut through everything. Deep, strong, desperate. "Ranger," he whispered. The dog was on his feet the moment Daniel reached the cage. His tail thumped once, low, restrained. Their eyes met, 6 feet apart, steel between them. But something wordless passed between man and dog. Years of loyalty compressed into that one look. Daniel broke the lock with a wrench he'd stolen from the garage. "Let's go, partner." Ranger bounded free, his fur slick with rain, his injured shoulder already stiff but ignored. The two ran into the night like ghosts freed from their chains. Across town, in an abandoned shipyard warehouse, Mia Torres hung from a chair, wrists tied, blood trickling from a cut at her temple. The men guarding her weren't cops. They were mercenaries, hard-eyed and efficient. Their leader, Nathan Voss, was a tall, lean man in his 40s, slicked back blonde hair, and a smile that never reached his eyes. His expensive coat didn't fit the dirty floor beneath his boots. "You should have stopped digging," Voss said calmly, lighting a cigarette. His voice was smooth, too calm for the violence around him. "You could have had your engineering contract, your name in the paper. But you had to play hero." Mia spat blood. "Heroes don't work for men like you." He laughed softly. "No, they die for them." Outside, a rumble cut through the rain. A police SUV skidding to a stop. Ranger barked once, loud and sharp. Daniel kicked the side door open, gun drawn. The light from the burning barrels painted his soaked face in gold and shadow. "Let her go, Voss." Voss sighed. "You're supposed to be in custody. Guess I missed curfew." Then chaos. Gunfire shattered the silence. Ranger lunged, knocking one guard off his feet, teeth flashing in the dim light. Daniel dove behind a crate, returning fire. Bullets sparked off the metal, rain and gunpowder mixing in the air. A stray round hit a fuel line. Fire roared to life. Flames crawled up the walls, orange swallowing black. "Ranger! Find Mia!" Daniel shouted. The dog darted through, smoke and debris, nose low, barking once, then again, shorter, urgent. Daniel followed the sound, kicking through a half-collapsed steel door. Mia was inside, still tied, the ceiling above her groaning. He sliced the ropes and pulled her free as the floor cracked. "Move!" A steel beam crashed down, but Ranger leapt, grabbing the rope cable in his jaws, pulling with everything he had. The beam tilted just enough for Daniel to drag Mia clear. Fire surged behind them as the roof gave way. They stumbled outside, coughing, soaked, alive. Voss was already fleeing toward the docks, where a speedboat waited, engines roaring. Daniel raised his pistol, but before he could shoot, another shot echoed from the pier. Voss stumbled, dropped to his knees. Through the smoke, Captain Barrett stepped forward, uniform soaked, revolver steady. His face was pale, his expression carved from pain and purpose. "It ends tonight," he said, voice trembling. Voss turned, clutching his chest. "You think this changes anything?" Barrett didn't answer. The second gunshot came like thunder. Voss collapsed beside the burning crates. Barrett exhaled once, lowering his weapon. His knees gave out. Blood spread across his side. A return shot he'd never dodged. Daniel caught him as he fell. "Captain," Barrett's hand gripped his arm. "You were right. About everything. Protect her. Protect the truth." His eyes flickered once toward Ranger, standing guard in the rain, then dimmed for good. Daniel bowed his head. The sirens were coming, the harbor aflame, the storm above endless. But for the first time in months, he felt something break loose inside him. Not anger, but release. Barrett had found redemption, and Daniel still had a war to finish. Morning broke gently over Charleston Bay, painting the water in bands of rose and gold. The storm was gone, but the scent of salt, smoke, and iron still lingered, a ghost of the night that had changed everything. Daniel Brooks stood at the edge of the pier, wind tugging at his jacket, eyes on the horizon. His face looked older now, not from years, but from what he had survived. The faint scar across his cheek caught the sunrise like a silver thread. Beside him sat Ranger, his black and tan fur brushed clean, the bandage gone, a new collar shining around his neck. Behind them, reporters' voices echoed across the docks, flashes of cameras popping like fireflies. The world had finally learned the truth. Pierce Logistics, the company that had ruled the harbor's shadows, had fallen. Nathan Voss was in custody. Captain Barrett's name, once clouded by scandal, was now remembered with honor. The man who had given his life to stop the corruption he once protected. The case had spread across every network. And the story that reached the world's heart wasn't about money or crime or power. It was about a dog. That morning, Mia Torres stepped out of a black car, her figure framed against the pale sky. She wore a white trench coat that fluttered in the wind, her hair pulled back loosely, eyes bright despite the exhaustion of weeks spent writing and reliving the chaos. She carried a small velvet box and a folded copy of the newspaper. The front page headline read, "The dog who brought the harbor back to light. She approached Daniel slowly, a soft smile tugging at her lips. "You're hard to find without handcuffs these days," she teased. Daniel turned, a tired grin spreading across his face. "You didn't come all this way for jokes." Mia shook her head and knelt beside Ranger. The shepherd's tail thumped gently as she opened the velvet box, revealing a silver collar tag engraved with the words, "For those who stayed when others fled." Her voice softened. "You two deserve more than medals." Ranger leaned forward, licking her hand. A simple, wordless thank you. Later, the press gathered under a white tent set up near the rebuilt pier. A podium bore the seal of the Charleston Police Department. A woman in uniform took the microphone. Chief Lorna Hayes, a tall African-American officer in her mid-40s, with cropped hair and steady eyes that saw more than most, admitted. Her tone carried the calm authority of someone who had fought too hard to waste words. "Today," she said, "we honor courage, not the kind found in orders or rank, but the kind that rises when all else falls." She gestured toward Daniel and Ranger. "For bravery, loyalty, and service beyond duty, the city of Charleston awards the K-9 Medal of Courage." Applause rippled across the crowd as Daniel stepped forward, hand on Ranger's collar. The medal glinted in the light, simple and perfect. For a heartbeat, he imagined Barrett standing in the back. That half smile, the weight of forgiveness. When the ceremony ended, the crowd thinned. Daniel and Mia walked along the pier that had nearly burned months before. The water shimmered calm again, gulls calling overhead. "So, what now?" Mia asked, her voice caught between curiosity and concern. Daniel exhaled. "I'm done chasing after what's already gone. I sent in my resignation yesterday." She blinked. "You're leaving the force?" He nodded. "I'm starting something new. A K-9 Maritime Rescue Training Center right here. Harbor dogs for real heroes, the ones who pull people from the sea instead of chasing bullets." Mia smiled, eyes glistening. "Then this is where your story starts again." "Maybe it's where it always should have started," Daniel said. Ranger barked once, sharp and bright. As if agreeing, they reached the end of the pier, where a small wooden sign stood, freshly painted. Wind Harbor K-9 Rescue Center, founded by Officer Daniel Brooks and Ranger. The sunlight broke through the clouds, scattering diamonds across the water. Daniel knelt beside his partner, resting a hand on the dog's head. "We lost a lot, buddy," he whispered, "but at least we kept what's right." Ranger looked out toward the endless blue, then lifted his muzzle and barked, a deep, resonant sound that rolled over the waves, echoing like a promise. And as the morning wind carried it out to sea, the harbor finally felt clean again. Sometimes, miracles don't arrive with thunder or wings. They come quietly, through a loyal heart, a second chance, or the courage to stand when the world tells you to fall. Daniel thought he had lost everything: his faith, his family, even his purpose. Yet through the smoke and the storms, God sent him something simple, something pure, a Doyu who refused to give up. Ranger wasn't just a partner. He was a messenger, a reminder that when life burns us down, God often rebuilds us with love we never expected. Maybe that's the lesson of this harbor, that even in our darkest waters, there's still light waiting to rise. Faith doesn't always calm the storm. Sometimes it simply gives us the strength to walk through it, and the eyes to see the sunrise after. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a miracle today. Leave a comment below and tell us what your prayer is, because someone reading might be praying the same one. Write Amen if you believe that God still works through loyal hearts, quiet courage, and the bond between human and animal. And don't forget to subscribe, so together we can keep sharing stories of hope, faith, and the small everyday miracles that remind us God never leaves those who walk with love.